Yesterday, the hostage crisis in Algeria, also getting a lot of attention in the international press as well.
That's right. The Guardian says that this hostage crisis is sparking fears of an escalation. This militant attack on and the Algerian gas field has raised fears that this conflict in Mali could become an international battle that would bleed across the porous borders of the Sahel and the Sahara region. So the papers in the region as well are covering this evolving crisis in Algeria, as well as the French military operation in Mali. La Tribune, for instance, which is an Algerian newspaper, talks about what's not being said in this operation, because France's pretext is to secure the region and to protect Mali's territorial integrity in the name of democracy. But according to La Tribune, what's really hidden underneath all this is economic concerns. France is basically wanting to protect its assets in the Sahel region, and it also needs to ensure that the region is safe, because in neighboring Niger, France's company Areva is about to start tapping into a uranium mine, and so it needs to make sure that the region is safe. Excuse me. And so according to La Tribune, this is the real unconfessed reason behind the war in Mali.
Other stories in the papers, a lot of the papers reacting to President Barack Obama's gun control plan.
That's right. The Wall Street Journal says this has been Obama's political fixation since the Sandy Hook massacre. And it says that he's been doing all this, and meanwhile, some states have been being more constructive. And they look at what Democrat Governor John Hickenlooper has been doing in his state of Nevada, and he's been promoting an innovative overhaul of his state's mental health care system. And according to the Wall Street Journal, this is likely to make far more progress in reducing gun violence than Obama's new gun control measures.
You found quite a lot of the papers applauding Obama at the same time,
That's right. In The Guardian, Gary Young says this is how to be a president. And he says that finally an American president has made a sober, principled, and coherent intervention on gun control. But no one should expect radical progress in legislation, because the National Rifle Association is a very powerful lobby. Now, the Washington Post, in their editorial, they say as well that Obama has his work cut out for him. His proposals are sound, but the problem is that this package is probably politically unrealistic. And according to the Washington Post, it's important to single out on Obama's list what is the most important and what is politically possible. And meanwhile, the battle over better gun regulation has just begun.
Yeah, it's interesting that you used the word battle, didn't you? It was an interesting piece you pulled out, International Herald Tribune, investigating the terms used to discuss gun control.
That's right. This article says that in the debate on gun control, even the words can be loaded. Now, politicians and the media use gun vernacular often unconsciously. And according to the International Herald Tribune, this underscores the historical power of guns in America. And it gives some examples. For instance, Joe Biden said there was no silver bullet for stopping gun violence. Meanwhile, Obama said that he would not negotiate with a gun to his head. So this article says, no wonder it's hard to get rid of gun violence when Washington can't even get rid of its own gun vocabulary.
Okay, and finally, you've pulled something out in the wake of the Dreamliner scandal. The Independent investigating how to recycle jumbo jets.
That's right. You're going to need a very big Ben, according to the Independent. It says that we live in this society, this throwaway society, where it's all about newer, faster, stronger. That applies to everyday appliances, but it also applies to trains, planes, and spaceships. So how do you recycle them? So the Independent investigates this hidden world of waste. For instance, airplanes. You see an airplane graveyard where there are thousands of aircrafts that find a resting spot in the desert in Arizona and New Mexico. The same is true for trains. Space shuttles, meanwhile, it's a different story. Now, the space shuttles in the United States, for instance, the space race was such a source of pride that NASA decided not to recycle these planes, but to make them somewhat into a museum, and has spread the various shuttles across the country to natural science museums.
You think you could sell bits off for charity, or what about something like that? That will work, wouldn't it? I have a couple of tiles off a spacecraft. Flo, thank you very much, Florence Villeneuve, here with the international papers today here on France 24. Coming up for you next then, it's going to be time for today's business news here on France 24. No longer flying high, more on that story in fact, as the US becomes the latest country to ground Boeing 787 Dreamliner. We're looking at the reasons behind the plane's high-profile problems after the break.